Same dziewczyny podbijają dzielnie.
Ojej.
OpenID Connect and kind of identity in general on the Mac. Feel free to yell out questions as long. Happy to answer and take anything. I know we're being streamed live. Sure. Well, hello. So, and yeah, so this is a Mac right out. Actively, it's VM, but it's been set up in DEP. So we're going to go through. Sometimes I go for the local crowd and I would pick Polish, but then I might not be able to do the rest of the demo. So we're going to go down here, United States, and this is what a normal user would find taking a Mac out of the box, right? And this is where we have the offer to be managed through MDM, all right? So new to Jamf Pro 10.9 was the ability to have a pre-stage enrollment package. And so that's what we're going to do once we hit this. So the Mac's now contacting the MDM server via the, I guess Apple wants us to call it automated MDM enrollment. We're getting that records back of the way. In the, and I can show you the Jamf Pro console once this is over if you're interested. In the Jamf Pro console, we have eliminated the exception of this one, that we can't turn this one off. So the only question the user gets is, what time zone are we in? I'm going to try and find Budapest. No, that's not what we're looking for. Vienna, no. No, Berlin, Prague, Warsaw, hey. Right, this is probably as close as we can. We're going to continue here. This is where our package is now being downloaded. So notice that the user has never been asked to actually create a new account. And one of the things that we're trying to solve here is having actual real modern authentication at the login window, having real modern authentication when you're doing a DEP enrollment of a, and then being able to do things using that token. So our package has now been downloaded. This is with the pre-stage enrollment package. So now we're at the login window, and this is our Azure sign-in. And this is where our first user signing in here. So a couple of things that we've got. This is a web view going back directly to Microsoft. So this is an Azure OpenID Connect app that we're going to authenticate against. Handles all the MFA and everything else because it's the web view directly from Microsoft. If we had local accounts on the system, we'd be able to click local off with the user local account if we want to. Turn this off and only allow specific users to use this. For example, if I hit cancel, I go right back here. We got a help button over here that will open up another web page in here. If we wanted to kind of solve the problem, if I'm a user sign in my Mac, how do I let help desk know I can't sign into my Mac? Right? So that actually bring up into that. So I'm just going to sign in Joel at Acme Soft. It's going to prompt me for my password here. I'm actually going to, I broke the Authenticator app on my device. That's the Microsoft two-factor. So I'm going to type in my password, and then it's going to give me a push. So here I got to approve the assignment request. I've got here on my, I shouldn't show this too much. There's some text on there that might not be good. So here I can hit Authenticator, and this is where I get the push notification on my phone. If I hit approve, I've now authenticated, and now I've actually passed that OpenID Connect authentication. So now I know that I'm a valid user in that domain. This is just an app hosted in Azure. Very simple, but happy to show it to you. We just are doing an OpenID Connect authentication against it. I now have an ID token of the user, so I know their name, short name, those kinds of. But what I don't have is the password, because that web view previously, I'm not able to get the password out of it. Since the Mac is a little bit adamant about having a password for a user, I'm asking the user to type their password in again.
Can you write a wrong password?
So here's the wrong password, right? And if I hit return, or can't continue here, incorrect password, please try again. So it clears it out. Because here
is a resource owner password grant. It's one of the other flows that OpenID Connect has, and I'm able to use this to validate a plain text password back against Azure. All right, and that lets me know that the password is in synchronization and life is good. So if I put that in this time, and don't listen to Adrian again, and hit continue, now I'm actually creating a new local account based upon my Azure identity and my Azure password. Important to know, and we'll talk about this in a little bit when we get in there, that we're not actually authenticating the user to the system. Mac OS still does that. What we're doing is showing them, we're creating that account beforehand. So we have a EULA screen here. We've had now that we have a login window plugin, it's very easy for us to do most anything we want. We're able to do setup screens. We're able to do EULA screens. We're kind of interested in a couple of different, we've had a customer that wanted us to use location services to determine where the machine is, to do a little bit of rudimentary conditional access based upon that. So we've got some other really cool things that we're kind of looking at in this space. Here what we wanted, we'd been asked by customers to have an actual button that the user had to agree to instead of just closing their eyes and hitting return or something like that. So now past this, we got to hit I agree and hit the next button. Takes us next to what we call our placebo bar. This is very similar to DEP Notify. If you run this at the login window, underneath the covers. So all of this is configurable. That image of the kind of bunch of applications coming out of the box, you can change all that text. You can put a big image there. You can determine how far along the way it is in this process. All of that is by a script that's running under the covers, kind of writing to a log file. And then as soon as you're done, you just quit it and you move on to the next one. So we're using this to here so that users, if you need to do policy execution, you can see what's going on the machine. All of that is just being executed by a script under the covers. So it makes it whatever you need to. We can also give your script the username of who's signing in, their UPN, if you're in an Azure or an AD environment that may be interesting to you, and a couple of other pieces of information for ID token. We're also looking at being able to pass the entire ID token in, and either authenticate to other file shares, not file shares, any sort of web services, so that way you can use that user's OAuth token to authenticate as that user, maybe pull down additional packages and things like that. All right. In this particular case, there's nothing wrong to spin the bar until I'm done talking. At this point, because your script that's making all of this change is running as root under the covers. So we're also using it. We have some sites that are looking at it for doing host posture detection, because you can run this even before the login process. So if I want to make sure that the system is on 10.14.3 or better, that a particular security update has been applied, or anything along those lines, I can do all of that management right here and block the user from signing in until I know that the system is actually good. If it's not good, since I'm running policies, I'll be able to pull down packages. I'll be able to remediate that problem. So you have a lot of flexibility to what you want to do here as an admin. I'm just going to hit the secret key combination to make it go away. And now the Finder is being set up, and I'm going to be in this particular case, I'm going to be admin because we've set that up in application in Azure with roles. And if I application, I then become an admin. We do that live every time you sign in. So if you do revoke their admin access, the next time they sign in, we'll demote them to a standard user. I've gotten into the system. So here in the Finder, if I open up System Preferences and go to Users and Groups, you can see an admin user. Here's another app that we've got. We'll talk about this in a little bit. Pulled in my full name from the ID token, so all of that looks nice and pretty. You can see that I'm an admin. If I open up an app that you probably haven't used in a while, no, stop, get there. All right, let me just do it this way.
Directory utility. So if I go into the directory editor, type in my name, here's my user record. There's a couple of things in here. You can see my actual Azure identity that I've signed in as. So now we know who this account has been mastered from. So you've got an easy way of, if the user wants to be Fluffy Bunny 72 on the machine, that's fine. That's between them and their own sense of value. But in this case, you'll be able to have scripts and everything that look up that network user attribute, and you'll always know who they were in Azure and who they were kind of mastered off of. We've also got another piece here, OIDC provider. This lets you know exactly what cloud identity that this came from. Currently in the product, we support Okta and Azure, but we'll also have Ping, OneLogin, Salesforce. All right, I can sign in with your Yahoo account. IBM Cloud Identity, who uses IBM Cloud Identity? I thought I was playing to the crowd, but yeah, that's what I thought. So there's pretty much any OpenID Connect provider we can authenticate directly against. That also includes ADFS. So you have a lot of customers that may have ADFS on-prem that have glued that together with Azure. We can authenticate directly as a web application to that ADFS instance. So that allows them to keep their passwords and everything else on-prem. We also stamp the record with when we last successfully authenticated them to the cloud provider. All right. We currently do not. We're looking forward to a future where you'll be able to tell us if they haven't signed in to Azure within the last 15 days, then we're still looking at how to handle kind of the offline issues. Right, because right now, obviously to get authenticated to Azure or another cloud identity provider, you're going to have to be online. If you're not online, you won't have much success here. So we're looking at how can we forcing you to log into a network authentication, but then still handle when you're on the plane, when you don't have an internet connection or something like that, but then keep you safe. We're also very much looking into supporting things like U2F keys. And the like, so that you'll be able to have a multi-factor local offline function. And we think we've got some good ideas in there. So this is the record. Otherwise than that, local user record. We grabbed the next unique ID in the list. We had a 501, so this is 502. They have a local home folder, and I could immediately take this machine off the network, and it'll still be able to authenticate because, again, it is a local account. Any questions on that? All right. So we've got another app that kind of goes along with this. And this app sits up here. It's called Verify. And its goal is kind of twofold. The first one is to validate your password against Azure. So when you set this up, identity provider, in this case Azure Application ID. So this is the app in Azure that we're actually authenticating against. A few other things if you need to tweak this. We can then get Kerberos tickets automatically. So since many of these Azure accounts will be signing in offline or off the AD domain, signing into Azure because they're on the public internet, and then at some point in time firing up to the internal network, this app will listen for network changes, and every time the network changes, it looks to see if Active Directory is reachable. If Active Directory is reachable, we'll then be able to actually silently get the user's Kerberos tickets using the same password that they signed into the Mac with. So we're trying to glue that all together because most normal users have no idea what a Kerberos ticket is, but they really get annoyed when they can't get to an SMB file share or SharePoint or a few of the other things that really don't have a lot of SAML authentication options to them. So we can validate that. We validate the password up against Azure. If that works, we then validate it locally against a local account. If either one of those are off, we can either call your own, we maybe need to pick a better name here, but fail tool, which if you had a script that wanted to alert you as an admin that maybe the user might be out of sync, we'd be able to call that. The ability, we write this all out to the preference file, so you can use an extension attribute if you're using Jamf to check it every so often, and then write back to your Jamf Pro server whether this user is in compliance or not. wrong, we then will alert the user as to, hey, they need to go change this and figure this out. It's every number of minutes they want to do. Network account, so this is how often we go back to Azure and check the authentication there. Once we can get your entire AD user record back. This includes custom attributes and any other things you might want to be looking at. And once we have, and then information. We also get the password expiration. We do fine-grained password policies. We follow that back. We query AD for what your password expiration is, and we'll actually list that up here in the menu bar too if you want us to do that. So it's kind of a handy way of doing a lot of authentication and kind of other. We do have the ability, it's not here, but you can list file shares in a configuration profile, and we'll automatically mount those if the Kerberos tickets are there. We also have the ability to have actions, so you can have scripts and other things, so you can just have a pull-out menu of whatever actions and other stuff that you want. So we end up having a lot of functionality for the user. Anything in the menu can be hidden, changed as far as the text goes, customized to whatever you want. It works with dark mode now. That was a little more effort than it should have been, but it's there. And you can remove any of these as well. So if you don't want to show the sign-in, you don't have to. And this whole you don't even have to show in the menu bar, as we have the ability to run it entirely headless. Covers be constantly checking that their password in Azure is the same as their password locally, and then only pop up a dialog box. So the goal here with this app is to be kind of as silent and as out of the way for the user as possible until they've gotten themselves into trouble, and then an admin needs to come in and intervene. Questions? All right. I'll try that again. That didn't work. I'll go back up here. And if I expand this out so everybody can see that we've written, let me do sudo first. So we got a root shell. We've got a binary called auth chain. This allows us to do all the manipulation of the authentication database. So this is what Apple uses for determining what can and can't be done by the user as they go through this. So in this particular case, what we care about here is the system.login.console write. So this determines what mechanisms and in what order they're going to be evaluated when a user is at the login window. All right? And if this would almost be identical. That's probably self-explanatory. And there would be one entry here towards the top that would be the built-in login window, which is just the UI that collects the username and password. All right? We wanted to try and keep that. Requiring a web view, we had to move to our own UI so that we had something specific in there. All right? And so that's this Jamf Connect login check OIDC for check. Got a power control mechanism. This allows you, if you hit the shutdown or restart buttons at the login window, we actually pass the authentication through. Power control sees that and then reboots the machine. That's marked as privileged because that's actually running as root. The Apple APIs on this, and we follow them quite well, are that if you're going to do anything that requires root access, UI. All right, so it does make for some kind of interesting dichotomies. Or you can do stuff, but you typically can't do both at the same time. All right, so we've got a power control, which allows us to do restart and shutdown, create user mechanism, which is really doing a lot of the magic of this process. Because this is where we're actually creating, just using the Open Directory APIs to do that. We can automatically turn on File Vault for the user. We just use FDE setup and File Vault, if you've got a configuration profile to escrow the recovery key, that just happens normally. We've got a mechanism here. If you have currently bound machines and you're using the 80 plugin on your system, we can actually the machine. Little fun trick that we do. We don't remove the bind, but that's up to you as the admin to do it. We just demobilize you. We've got a EULA mechanism. This was the long bits of Moby Dick that you saw earlier on. We've then got a run script. This mechanism is actually running a script under the covers. All right, so it just launches it. Kind of similar to Outset if you've been using that, or any sort of login script. So this one we give you a little more control over. And it's running as a privileged user, so that way you can do that stuff. Here's Notify, that's that placebo bar that I showed you, that will just run up there. Should I stop moving around? So I'll keep moving then. Once we get done, this is all of our UI and kind of all of the setup to, is this user valid in our eyes? We then put the username and password into a hints structure that gets forwarded on down here to built-in authenticate privileged. This is the actual mechanism. This is an Apple mechanism that actually authenticates you to the Mac and begins the process of logging you in. Everything that we do before that is all just kind of local, actually become a user. And then as these mechanisms kind of go through, you know, you've got a login window support cleanup that's done. MCX comes in. If you've got MCX still, it synthesizes that. And then we've got a couple of our own mechanisms at the end that happen after you've been authenticated, but before you've ended up in the Finder. So this is where we can turn on File Vault. It's running privileged, so there's no UI. We've got some fixes for Sierra since that slowed down the login window, so we've got that in here. We've got a keychain add mechanism. Just by signing in, if I go over here and open up keychain access, I've actually created a password here. So I've got a Jamf Connect verify password. So the password for this app is automatically created by the login window as you log in through our keychain add mechanism. Since single sign-on isn't always single sign-on, we wanted to do this so you could leverage this for other applications and have that password without the user having to type it in again. We even go through and do all the access control correctly, so you can see that we've been set up for Jamf Connect Verify, confirm before asking, and all the rest. In the next version, we'll be able to update in, so that way window will update this password in the keychain so they always have the latest and greatest and the ability to use that in other applications and things like that. We then have set up Office. Since a lot of our customers are using Office, this actually writes out a couple of preference files, and I should be able to have these. CD library, I think it's in the application support. A one-armed typist. Is Office in here? I got to remember where this all ended up. Anyway, we write out 2 or 3 plist files. So when if I were to open up Microsoft Office, I wouldn't be authenticated to Office because that's already been, because we don't have the ability to do that. My initials would already be in there. My less just kind of. We've kind of set this up specifically for Office, but it'd be very easy for your scripts to do the exact same thing, as they would be called script process, and we would already know the username and everything else about them signing in. You could also have this run script run later on, so it could run at the end when the home, you could write out some preference keys and some other stuff into that user space. Our goal is to set up as much stuff as possible without the user even knowing it's been set up, and just by doing this based upon how they've signed into the system. So, this. All right, we've got one other little trick with this, and I won't have it all the way configured, but you'll get the idea. If I do, here we go. We wrote a PAM module. I did the first run code. Josh rewrote it at Objective-C, which, so fun thing, if you write a PAM module in Swift, because it's got to include the runtime with it, what's normally about 2 or 3K on disk becomes about 10 megs. So we get a very, very large PAM module. In this case, we have now a small one. Josh rewrote it in Objective-C. It's really the only Objective-C that we have. And you can add this in. There we go. Auth. And we'll make this as sufficient so you can actually fail back. And then PAM SAML.so.
You're missing M.
Oh, thanks. Remember all my VI commands. Look at that. All right, and so now what will happen